Hi, I'm Dave Bekerman, and my film is TRAD. Well, I'm a big horror buff, and when I had the idea for TRAD, comedy and horror came to mind because I think it's kind of a ridiculous scenario, you know? So I do think of it as an absurd, satirical, dark comedy as well as a horror thriller. And I think some of my favorite movies marry those two. So that's what I was trying to emulate. Because when I first heard about trad wives, it wasn't like an organic thing that people were doing. It was like a performative thing that, to the point where I wasn't even sure if it was real. I didn't know if it was just something that people were doing to kind of get clout and get paid. And I'm still not 100% sure. But you know, the fact that people like it as much as they do made me think it didn't really even matter whether it was real or not. And I decided, let's satirize, you know, social media as well. So that was always a part of the concept. Obviously, I didn't think of it consciously when I came up with it, but it's very Stepford Wives for a modern audience in some ways. And then consciously, George Romero's Season of the Witch and Anna Biller's The Love Witch came to mind. And then regarding the relationship between the two leads, for some reason, Bob Fosse's Star 80 was an inspiration, just in the way that it was a woman kind of trapped in a love bomby, gaslighty kind of relationship. I was hoping for 10 minutes, but you know, things happen, and I'm pretty happy with 12, you know. But yeah, I wanted to keep it tight and pack as much in as I could. I'm kind of a story-first person. I come from a writing background originally, so I was very focused on characters and something developing over the course of a short film. I would say, I mean, finances are always the biggest challenge, you know, to get great collaborators. I was very lucky that a lot of people donated their time or took pay cuts for their normal rates to make it happen. But even with people being so generous, it's still hard to get your vision on the screen, you know, especially when it's a little bigger than one room, one character. There's a little more going on. So yeah, just being able to execute it properly on a budget was the challenge. The casting was mainly people that I'd known and worked with before, and then reaching out to friends who'd worked with other people. So the second I had the idea for TRAD, Millie Sanders came to mind because we've been friends forever, and I've been a fan of hers forever. You know, she's a writer and filmmaker in her own right who's done a lot of cool horror shorts. And I said, you know, this is perfect, this is Millie. So that was easy. And then working with other friends, falling in line like Steve Moulton, David Stambra, Mary O'Neill, Ken Narasaki. And then I couldn't find homemaker Mary's husband amongst my group of friends. So I reached out to other filmmaker friends and got in touch with Andrew Perez, and he was perfect. Yep. So I didn't go through a traditional casting process. It was all like connections. I mean, it took me back to film school in a lot of ways because, like I said, the budget was meager and everyone's like pitching in, doing favors. We shot it all at my house. One night I went to bed and woke up next to a C-stand. It was pretty difficult in that regard, but also fun. And I was very lucky that the cast and crew was on board and game, and everyone was down for the cause. Climax of the film, without giving it away, was a little challenging, and we did a bunch of takes. And I'm glad we did because we nailed it, you know, but it wasn't easy. I mean, my favorite part of the experience was working with friends and making new ones. That is what it's all about, you know, beyond getting it to an audience, that's the gravy, but, you know, just having that communal experience of teaming up with a bunch of like-minded people to make something is, you know, priceless. I was in a really tough position because I was directing and producing. So I had the clock in my head the whole time. I had the bank account in my head the whole time. And I kind of, you know, I don't want to say I had to settle ever, but there's just a certain point where you can't keep going or else the movie won't get made, right? So you have to be content that it's good enough. And so much of that comes back to pre-production. Like if you, and I was lucky that my DP, Matt Blake, and the cast came over to the house and we worked it through a bunch of times. And so when it came time to actually shoot the movie, we were able to stay mostly on schedule and get everything we needed. But that is one of the challenges of low budget indie filmmaking is, you know, can you get it to match your vision? There wasn't a ton of ad-libbing, but the script was constantly in development up through the shooting. My wife, Jill, was giving me new lines to add in like the night before, and I was apologizing to the actors. But everyone was cool and worked out great. But even in post-production, you're still writing in a way. And my editor, Jesse Soff, was coming up with ways to emphasize certain beats and rearrange things. And so the writing never ends. I feel like I'm still writing log lines and pitches, and, you know, it's not the script, but it's part of the writing process of selling the idea, you know. It was a little of both. I was involved a decent amount, but let him run free when he was inspired, and we'd reconnect. I'd go to his place, we'd work together, then he'd want to take some time alone to finesse things, and it was a pretty healthy back and forth. The shoot was 3 days with a half a day of pickups a couple weeks after we wrapped. The best ways of collaboration is probably my biggest lesson, is like different people respond well to different kinds of encouragement and different notes. And I love incorporating everyone's ideas, because it just, as long as it fits the ultimate goal of making the best movie, I mean, that's how great movies get made, you know, is like everyone's best ideas. Yeah, I do think it's relevant, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't, but that's why I made it. Going into it, I hope that they find it a little creepy, a little funny, and at the end, very cathartic. I think, you know, a world that's going kind of crazy, where a lot of people want to go back in time to a more nostalgic period where things were seemingly easier, is a false vision. And I hope people come away with the movie realizing you can't stop progress.